A compassionate nurse begins caring for a young boy in a vegetative state within a secluded mansion. The parents, consumed by grief and guilt, have distanced themselves from their child. As the nurse fosters a connection with the boy, an unexpected event occurs one day, leaving everyone astounded and rekindling hope in the possibility of recovery.
Hello, my friends. I am Mimi, and this is Inspiring Stories by Mimi. I hope you enjoy this story.
Amelia smoothed her spotless ivory uniform and inhaled deeply before tapping the chime. It was her inaugural shift as a private caregiver at the Blackwoods estate, an affluent clan residing in a palatial home on the city's periphery. She'd stepped in for a colleague who'd departed abruptly, uncertain of what lay ahead. The entrance swung open, unveiling a woman in her 40s with pronounced shadows beneath her eyes and a fatigued countenance. "You must be the new caregiver, do come in," said Eleanor Blackwood in a lifeless tone. Amelia trailed her through the grand foyer, noting the refined decor but also spotting a fine film of dust on the furnishings. It was as if the dwelling, once brimming with vitality, had entered a state of suspended animation. Eleanor guided her to a chamber on the second level. "This is Lucas, my son. He's 10 years old and has been in this condition for a year," she elucidated, her voice cracking. Amelia neared the medical bed where a lad with golden locks lay. His lids were shut, and his respiration was barely discernible. An array of medical apparatus encircled him, sustaining his life artificially. Lucas remained stationary while his parents, Eleanor and Robert, ensnared in their own anguish and remorse, scarcely approached their offspring, convinced he could no longer perceive them. What pained them most profoundly was that prior to the incident, Lucas was the sort of child who illuminated every space he entered, perpetually sporting a grin. He adored frolicking in the estate's grounds and engaging in chess matches with his father on weekend afternoons. "What befell him?" Amelia inquired gently. Eleanor averted her gaze. "A vehicular collision. I was at the wheel. A lorry veered out of control. Lucas was in the rear seat." She faltered, unable to continue as silent tears trickled down her cheeks. Eleanor fixed her gaze on the floor as if the words bore an insufferable burden she could never relinquish. A hush descended upon the room, but in her psyche, the resonance of the lorry's impact reverberated ceaselessly. Each day, that minuscule fragment of time returned to torment her, the scene replaying like a cinematic loop that refused to cease. If only she'd veered in the opposite direction, if only she'd glanced at the mirror once more. Every choice, every minutiae of that fateful afternoon now appeared as lethal decisions. What were once mundane actions had metamorphosed into profound scars of culpability on her soul, which no passage of time could obliterate. Amelia felt a constriction in her chest. Half a decade ago, she'd lost her younger brother to an uncommon ailment. The anguish of that loss still accompanied her, but it had also molded her vocation as a caregiver. Tending to critically ill patients was her method of honoring his memory. "My condolences, Mrs. Blackwood. I shall exert my utmost to care for Lucas," Amelia affirmed earnestly. Eleanor nodded silently, expressing gratitude before exiting the chamber. Amelia found herself alone with Lucas, scrutinizing his vital indicators and familiarizing herself with the medical equipment. As she inspected the intravenous line, she began to converse softly with the boy. "Greetings, Lucas. I'm Amelia, and I'll be overseeing your care from this day forward. I hope we can forge a connection." As the days unfolded, Amelia established a caregiving regimen. Beyond the medical procedures, she ensured she conversed with Lucas, recounted tales, and even hummed melodies softly to him. Eleanor and Robert, Lucas's progenitors, seldom materialized in the room. Amelia caught only fleeting glimpses of them, invariably with haggard and distant expressions. Since the calamity, Eleanor and Robert scarcely made eye contact. The guilt, though unvoiced, was omnipresent, eroding what remained of the bond that once united them. One afternoon, while refreshing the linens, Amelia overheard a dispute emanating from the lower level. The elevated voices of Eleanor and Robert resonated through the vacant residence. "It's been a full year, Eleanor. We must come to terms with the fact that he might not," Robert's voice faltered. "I implore you not to complete that sentence," Eleanor exclaimed. "He's our flesh and blood. And that's precisely why witnessing him in this state is so excruciating. Perhaps it's time to banish that thought. As long as I draw breath, I shall battle for our son. The reverberation of a door slamming concluded the altercation. Amelia sensed the gravity of that fractured family. She gazed at Lucas, so tranquil in his profound slumber. That evening, post-shift, Amelia found herself restless. She tossed and turned, her mind preoccupied with Lucas and his family. She recalled how her own kin had coalesced during her brother's illness, deriving strength from faith and mutual affection. Weeks turned into months, and Amelia couldn't help but draw parallels between Lucas and her younger sibling. Both were youngsters brimming with vitality, prematurely severed from all they cherished. The distinction lay in the fact that while fate had permanently claimed her brother, Lucas lingered. It was as if he were suspended between realms. And Amelia pondered whether the presence of loved ones possessed the capacity to tether someone to existence. That was the opportunity she couldn't allow Eleanor and Robert to squander, the prospect of reclaiming Lucas. It was her unspoken mission there, even if it hadn't been articulated. One day, Amelia arrived ahead of schedule. She discovered Eleanor in the culinary area, absently agitating a cup of tepid coffee. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwood. Might I have a word?" Amelia inquired tentatively. Eleanor lifted her gaze, her eyes weary. "Certainly, Amelia. Is there a concern regarding Lucas?" "Actually, I wish to discuss you and Mr. Blackwood." Amelia inhaled deeply before proceeding. "I'm aware it's not my place, but I can't help but observe the extent of your mutual suffering and its impact on Lucas." Eleanor's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Lucas is comatose." "Indeed," Amelia affirmed gently, "but I believe he can still sense your presence, your devotion, and at this juncture, that's what he requires most." Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. I can't bear to look at him without feeling culpable." "If I hadn't been driving that day," Amelia clasped the woman's hand. "Misfortunes occur, Mrs. Blackwood. Self-reproach won't aid Lucas. What he needs is your affection and resilience." Eleanor broke down, years of suppressed anguish finally surfacing. Amelia embraced her, allowing her to weep on her shoulder. At that moment, Robert entered the kitchen. Witnessing the scene, he hesitated momentarily before approaching. "What's transpiring?" he inquired, concerned. Amelia regarded him with resolve. "Mr. Blackwood, I believe it's time for you both to visit Lucas together." Robert appeared taken aback by the suggestion, but Eleanor raised her tear-streaked visage and extended her hand to her spouse. "She's right, Robert. Our son needs us." With faltering steps, the couple ascended the staircase, accompanied by Amelia. In Lucas's room, they paused at the threshold, as if an imperceptible barrier impeded their entry. Amelia delicately steered them closer to the bed. "You can clasp his hand, converse with him. Lucas needs to sense your presence," she encouraged. Eleanor was the first to act. With quivering hands, she caressed her son's face. "Lucas, my darling. Mother's here." Her voice wavered. Robert approached the opposite side of the bed, his eyes glistening. "Hey, sport. We've missed you terribly." Amelia observed the scene with a heavy heart. This marked the inception of an arduous journey, but it was a commencement. Silently, she withdrew from the room to afford the family some privacy. In the ensuing weeks, a subtle transformation began to unfold in the Blackwood household. Eleanor and Robert initiated daily visits to Lucas, sometimes jointly, sometimes individually. Amelia urged them to converse with their son, share their daily experiences, and reminisce about joyous memories. One afternoon, while tidying the room, Amelia unearthed a dust-covered chess set in the wardrobe. She recalled Eleanor mentioning Lucas's fondness for the game. Without hesitation, she retrieved the set and meticulously cleaned it. When Robert arrived for his daily visit, Amelia greeted him with the chess set in hand. "Mr. Blackwood, I heard that you and Lucas used to play together. Perhaps he'd appreciate a game?" Robert froze momentarily, gazing at the set with profound sorrow. Gradually, he reached out and accepted the board. He settled beside Lucas's bed and, with tentative movements, began to arrange the pieces. The soft clinking of chess pieces filled the room, ushering in an atmosphere of serenity that Amelia had never before experienced there. She noticed a tear rolling down Robert's cheek as he played, murmuring softly about strategies he'd undoubtedly shared with his son countless times. It was at that instant that something extraordinary occurred. A tear fell from Lucas's eyes. Amelia held her breath, fearing she was hallucinating, but then it happened again. Once more, another tear fell. "Mr. Blackwood," she exclaimed, "look." Robert abruptly ceased playing, his gaze fixed on where Amelia was pointing. "Good heavens," Robert whispered, incredulous. "Eleanor. Eleanor, come quickly." Eleanor rushed into the room, alarmed by her husband's calls. When she beheld the scene, she began to call out to Lucas. Time seemed to stand still at that moment. The cruel passage of time appeared to grant them a renewed opportunity. Eleanor, with a trembling hand, touched her son's face, and for the first time in a year, felt a genuine connection. It wasn't merely a mother's touch, but a silent supplication for him to return, to cling to life. Robert, beside her, was struggling to contain a sob that threatened to escape. That minute gesture, a tear so subtle it might have gone unnoticed, was a tempest of hope for them. They remained silent, but the quietude was imbued with a singular certainty. Lucas could hear them. "Lucas, my love, can you hear us?" she inquired through her tears. Amidst her own tears, Amelia knelt beside Lucas and, with a heart brimming with hope, invoked the heavens for strength and healing. She sensed in her fervent prayer a silent connection with the boy. Perhaps that small tear that trickled down his eyes was an indication, a subtle proof that he was still present, hearing, feeling, even in his apparent dormancy. When Lucas made the faintest of movements, something nearly imperceptible, emotions erupted. Eleanor and Robert's restrained sobs mingled with Amelia's exclamations of joy. It was nothing short of miraculous, they thought. There could be no other explanation. Somehow, Lucas was finding his way back to them.
If you enjoyed the story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.